This is Superman. Welcome to Godfall 101.
Welcome to Godfall 101. Sure seems like we're getting a lot of things to talk about recently, which is good. I've made a lot of videos in the last couple days. Look, I know some of you are okay with not knowing much more until the game is released. That's fine, you do you, but I think these videos will help others decide if it's worth it to them to jump into the game right away and part with their hard-earned cash. Also, quick side note, it was confirmed on the official Godfall Twitter account that PS Plus will not be required to play solo. Alright, so we do have some new information from another interview with Dick Heyne from Lara Jackson from the website Gamebyte. I'll link the article in the description below. So let's get to the important stuff first, and then I'll discuss some of the story stuff. But first, I want to thank Lara for bringing us the interview. Please go check out the article so that the original author gets credit and validation for her work. Please go check that out, get them clicks, let them know that, hey, writing articles is tough work, so they need to go do that. So let's dive into the interview and the comments from technical director Dick Heyne. Dick shines a light on the difficulty scaling we've all been wondering about, saying, quote, Godfall is all about letting the player engage with the world on their terms. The difficulty of enemies will scale up in co-op. So while more players naturally increases total DPS, that's damage per second, it doesn't necessarily mean you are clearing encounters faster. Put another way, there are optimal solo builds and optimal co-op builds. It will be up to the player to decide which style best suits them. Neither approach should feel suboptimal. Dick was also asked how hard the game is. Drawing early comparisons to Dark Souls, we recently learned from previous interviews that the team is drawing more inspiration from games like God of War and Devil May Cry, rather than Dark Souls, but we learned from the article that we will actually have a say in how difficult the game will be. Quote from Dick, quote, the simple answer is that it depends on the difficulty you select. Godfall will have various difficulty levels that should satisfy veteran and newcomers alike. We want Godfall to feel accessible to all, since the game naturally encourages you to battle alongside friends. However, we'd be doing a disservice to the player base if combat becomes a mindless hack and slash. Those seeking a challenge will likely be delighted by what awaits them. End quote. Now, I'm curious what you all would rather have, a mindless hack and slash looter or something with a bit more of a challenge. Let me know in the comments below. We can all assume that based on other looters, that the best gear will either only drop in the higher tier difficulties or it will have a higher drop rate in order to encourage player progression towards those higher level difficulties. I know one of the biggest complaints I had about Anthem Endgame, yeah, I know, I use the term Endgame loosely in that case, but all of the special cosmetic gear in Anthem was attainable by playing the game on the lowest difficulty settings, leaving me with the feeling of disappointment that people really only had to put in time to get the coolest stuff. That might just be a me thing though. So let's move on to the talk about the DualSense haptics. Now this is something that I think is cool, but I'm not very interested about. Dick says, we really want you to feel combat. Godfall aims to push a power fantasy unlike any other, and being able to feel the direction your weapon swings in the palm of your hand is unreal. End quote. Now maybe I'll be able to use this feature if I buy a DualSense and it works with my PC. I am curious how much resistance the triggers will actually give. Maybe I'll change my tune once I have a chance to get the controller in my hands. But for now, and me personally, the haptics are just a novelty. I don't want to downplay the work someone is doing to make that happen. But like I said, maybe I'll change my tune once I get it in my hands, and this is something that you really have to experience in order to understand. Dick also gave us some insight into the skill tree. Quote, there are 5 weapon classes: longsword, greatsword, polearm, warhammer, and dual blades. All weapons have light attacks and heavy attacks. The combos you can pull off between light and heavy attacks will be dependent on the weapon class you are using. Yes, we absolutely encourage players to swap between weapon classes. A good example of this can be found in the skill grid. There are no weapon class specific nodes in Godfall's skill grid. The design philosophy behind this is simple. We don't want the player to feel forced to index into a particular weapon class. You might spend the first few hours of Godfall convinced you are a polearm one-trick, But what happens when a legendary Warhammer drops that is a perfect fit for your build? We don't want players to be bogged down by redoing their skill grid every time they find a new weapon. Instead, we designed all-encompassing weapon nodes on the grid. For example, when you first assign a point to the Weapon Techniques node, you unlock the weapon techniques for all 5 weapon classes, not just a particular class. Polarity attacks also encourage the player to swap between the 2 weapons they have in their loadout. That said, if a player wants to be a polearm one-trick, nothing in Godfall prevents them from pursuing that." End quote. I'm excited to see how big the skill tree is, and if it's something we will be able to fill 100% by the time the game is done, or if it will allow for players to make hard choices in how they build their tree. I actually prefer having to make those decisions in games, but I'm glad it doesn't force me to make that decision around gear. Like Heyne explains, making the decision is fine if it's on my terms, but when RNG forces me towards certain paths, it just isn't as much fun. Now this next thing could be 100% a non-issue, but I would feel bad if I didn't at least mention it. This is when Dick was asked about new IPs and story, and this just caught my attention. Quote, "Throughout the campaign, Orin will journey through the earth, water, and air realms to take down the Mad King Macros. Godfall's campaign is meant to feel like an ascension as the player climbs through the elemental realms." End quote. So why does this worry me? Well, in December, Keith Lee mentions 5 realms: earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. From the PC reveal video, Keith only mentions 4 realms: earth, fire, water, and air. So we've gone from 5 realms to 4 realms, now to 3. Now this, like I said, could just be a miscommunication and Keith and Dick misspoke, but I wanted to at least mention it because it stood out to me. Also, it could be that we don't visit the fire realm during the campaign. I don't know, but really we'll know soon enough. So speaking more about the realms, Dick says, quote, "Every realm is unique and sets its own tone, and all the realms exist within the Skybreaker monolith, the most glorious creation of the Valorian people. It can pierce the heavens, to reach through space and time, and to bend reality. Within the massive superstructure is an almost infinite world of layered elemental realms speared through by a central tower. At the apex of the tower lies the throne room of the Mad King Macros. The player will need to ascend the realms in order to ultimately face Macros. Once the player gains access to the elemental realms, they will start at the base of the monolith in the Earth realm." So the monolith sounds pretty impressive. It can reach through space and time. I wonder if this will be the way that the Duelist lore somehow connects to Godfall lore. I'm really excited to learn the extent of the power of the monolith. I imagine that there are a lot of possibilities for future content, future DLCs, because the monolith seems like it can be used for anything story-wise. There's a lot of weird things happening in there, so really whatever the creators think up, they can probably do. And speaking of outer space, Dick dropped some very, very revealing info when talking about side missions. Quote, "Side missions are combat-based. The Archons express themselves through combat. During combat, there will be various activities that pop up, but there are no fetch quests in Godfall." End quote. Alright, so 2 interpretations here. Either we are Archons and we're built for battle and that's how we're expressing ourselves, by killing things. And second, and to me more likely, we'll be doing tasks for certain Archons, and certain forms of combat will please certain Archons, similar to a faction or rep system, maybe unlocking certain Valorplates or cosmetics. I don't know at this point. The more and more I learn, the more confused I get, which I'm okay with. I like complex stories, but I assume that the Archons were bad because the Valorians defeated them and sent them back to the Spirit and Dream Realm. But now it sounds like we're going to be doing stuff for them? I'm not sure. Alright, so there you have it. Thanks again, Lara, for the interview. These were the things I thought were most interesting that I wanted to point out to people. We learned about difficulty settings and scaling, the skill grid, the magic of the monolith, and a little bit more. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon. And please always remember, just be kind to each other.